To politics now. We are joined by Senator John Thune, Republican from South Dakota. Thank you, Senator, for joining us. A lot to go at here. Let's begin with health reform. Where are we on the Graham-Cassidy bill? We're close, I'm told that, but how close are we?
Well, it's razor close. We're within striking distance, but it always comes down in the Senate to that handful of votes at the end that you have to try and swing. And so there are lots of discussions and conversations are going on and exchanging of information and educating senators who are still undecided about how this bill is going to impact their states. And I'm hopeful in the end that we'll be able to get to that necessary threshold of 50 votes to enable us to pass health care reform. This is really important. It's a commitment that we made, and Obamacare, as we know, is failing. It's led to higher costs and higher taxes and fewer options for people in this country. So we have to come up with a new way, and what's been laid out, I think, is a plan that is consistent with our principles, and that's distributing decision-making and power and control and money out of Washington back to the states and back to patients.
I think you're preaching to the choir, who are our viewers, Senator. The question being is, what's it going to take for us to get there, for Congress to get there, more importantly?
I think it's going to take, Ashley, obviously, persuading a couple of our senators who are still on the fence on this, but in many respects, some of it has to do with getting individual states who are impacted by this in a positive way to convey that to their senators. And there's a lot of those conversations that are going on right now, but in the end, it really comes down to trying to persuade that those last couple of necessary votes to get to 50, that it's important for us to act on this for the American people, to fix a failing system, and to convince these members that their states are going to come out well under the new bill. So it's all, at this point, kind of one-on-one conversations and trying to provide the necessary information to educate members to the point that they feel comfortable being a yes vote.
And talking of which, I'm assuming you are a yes vote on this as it stands?
I am. I've looked at it. I've had many conversations with our state about it. We think it makes sense, and we believe it moves us in the right direction. And I think that I give great credit to Senators Cassidy and Graham and Heller and Johnson for coming up with a plan that really does accomplish what we think needs to be done in repealing and replacing Obamacare, doing it in a way that protects people with pre-existing conditions and obviously gets at the issue of moving power and control out of Washington, D.C., so individual states can design programs that work in their states. The one thing we know is that a one-size-fits-all solution out of Washington doesn't work. That's what we had with Obamacare, and we can see what the results are: skyrocketing premiums and fewer options.
All right, let's move on to tax reform, another favorite subject of this particular broadcast. Senator, $1.5 trillion for tax cuts. So what's it going to be for? Who wins, who loses? Do we get 15% corporate tax rate? What's your feeling on that?
There are going to be a lot of moving parts to this, Ashley, and yes, families, middle-income families are going to see a big benefit, a big tax cut. That's really what this is about. That's what the president and members of Congress, at least those of us who are trying to push this idea forward, intend to accomplish, and that is to give much-needed tax relief to middle-income families who literally haven't had a pay raise now for the past 8 years. And this is something that will put more money in their pockets so they can spend for them and their families instead of sending it to the government.
Right.
But I do think that in terms of the business rates, they've got to come down. We know that. I think 15% is probably very ambitious, but if we could get down even to the OECD average in the 22 range, 23, 24, that would be a big win. And I think that businesses in this country need that. Otherwise, we're going to continue to hemorrhage businesses, companies, jobs overseas, jobs that ought to be staying in America and leading to higher wages for American workers. So we have to reform the tax code. We know that. We've got to get the rate down. I think we also need to look at ways that we can accelerate cost recovery, another big priority when it comes to economic growth. But this, on the business side, needs to be about growing the economy, creating better paying jobs and higher wages.
I'm right there with you. I want to quickly turn to world politics. Senator, German Chancellor Angela Merkel just responding to the president's speech, particularly about what he said about North Korea. Merkel says she's opposed to the military threat that Mr. Trump made. She wants a diplomatic solution and that any measures against North Korea other than sanctions are wrong. What's your response to that?
Well, we all want a diplomatic solution, and that's our first priority, and that's what the administration is working aggressively to try to achieve. But those discussions aren't effective if you don't have,
Right.
if you can't back that up with a military threat. And I think what we're seeing in North Korea right now is a desire on the part of this leader and his regime to threaten the United States and our allies, and we have to be prepared to answer that. And I think the President has made it very clear that the U.S. military is at the ready with all of its resources and firepower to respond if in some way North Korea
Yes.
threatens us or our allies. And that's you know, the Europeans obviously maybe have a different priority at the moment, but eventually, hopefully, they'll come around to the view that we have to work together. Yes, pursue diplomatic outcomes and solutions, but be prepared. Always, you know, speak softly but carry a big stick.
Exactly. Senator Thune, thank you so much for covering a lot of subjects for us. We appreciate it. Thanks for joining us.
Great to be with you. Thanks, Ashley.